I asked Rich to do this today because he is the embodiment of the organization. He's the head of the Faith in Action Committee. He's been an activist for a long time, a lot longer than I know, and I appreciate all the work and effort he's put into making UUCLR the place it is. So thank you, Rich.
I light this chalice with these words. Open our eyes to see what is beautiful. Open our minds to learn what is true. Open our hearts to love one another. Please join me in the affirmation of covenant, which you will find printed in your order of service, saying, Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve humankind in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine. Thus do we covenant with each other.
Thanks again, Rich. I'm proud today to proclaim everywhere that I am a UU. Not only am I a UU, but I'm a member of this congregation, this group, this community. It is special. And while I'm focusing on social action or social justice today, I want to say a few words about community. I arrived in Arkansas for the first time in about 2003. I came from Peoria, Illinois, to an area I had never been to, joining a city I had only read about, and to a so-called right-to-work state. And for those of you who don't know, the history of right to work, I believe, begins in Arkansas, and it's regarded by most historians as a way to keep the blacks down, to discriminate against blacks, to segregate black workers from white workers. So when I came down here, I knew I had to find a family of liberals or progressives, a family of those who thought of religion as love for all. And there was only one organization, one church, one religious group in Arkansas that came to mind, and that's the UUs. So here I came. I spent the first few years as a neighbor of the church, living in one of the apartments that surround it. Barb and I left for a short period of time to go out to California for the job. And I feel a need to apologize to this community today. During COVID, I rarely left the home. I rarely did anything and became the classic couch potato. And I silently dealt with my mental illness. For a long time, I have had depression. Sometimes severe, sometimes less, but it's always been on the edge of my vision. I haven't been on medicine for the depression for a long time, probably since about 2010 out in California. I've had a counselor, or tried to have a counselor 3 different times in my life, but I was never able to find the right one for me. And the right one for me at the time was when I decided to come down to Arkansas. I have a son who, at that time, had severe mental illnesses. I'm not sure I could put a diagnosis to it, but he was also an alcoholic and a drug abuser. Today he's neither of that, but he still sees a psychiatrist and a psychologist. I got permission from a counselor at that time to move to Arkansas, that my son was in a good place. He had help, and it was all up to him that Barb and I could do nothing further, that we had done as good a job as anybody could until that time. So I never felt at any time that the depression affected my work, either with the church or my work that earned me my wages or my pension. But that changed with COVID. It hit me hard, not the illness, COVID, but having to deal with it. I lost, I didn't lose any friends, but I had worked with an attorney when I was the president of a national labor union. And he contacted COVID early on and died up in New York. So that was always in the back of my mind. But there's a person among this community who helped me several months ago and really made me focus on what the depression was doing and how it really was affecting me, and that I needed to take some action. So I want to thank Nell. We all know who Nell is. I don't need to give her full name. She may not have realized that she was giving me help, but she was. My failures with dealing with UU-CLR and social justice had really gotten to me, and I am today searching for a counselor to get to. So what I'm really about here today is social justice. And social justice is the main reason that I am a UU. You may not believe like I do, I may not believe like you do, but we all share what being a UU is. The affirmation of covenant is not merely words, it has deep meaning. And to me, they have no meaning unless we take action against social injustices. I don't care what the injustice is. If it's meaning to you, it's meaningful to me. Rich Roy has put out, I guess a catalog is the best way to put it, of what UU-CLR as an organization is doing or has done with certain social justice projects. He also included organizations that individuals are engaged in. They run, those of us who have been around for a while have seen the list, we understand it. We know that it's an activity by the organization to do good, to do something about social justice. Barb and I help by baking cookies for Our House, a homeless shelter here in town, once a month. Other people help out with the van. Nell has the school project. There are all sorts of things that individuals and the organization get involved in. There are also people who are willing to go out, grab a picket sign, get involved in a protest, either of a few people or a large group of people, generally downtown near the state capitol, in front of the state capitol, or in a march. And those are all good. It's good for our soul. It's good for our psyche. It's activity. We're doing something to show the world what we believe in. We want to speak truth to the powers in the state capitol or powers in the state of Arkansas. We want them to know that not everyone is a MAGNA person or an ultra-conservative. Generally, that's individuals getting involved. while some people may wear their UU t-shirts, it's not the organization that gets involved. And I understand that. There's a deep feeling, I'm not sure if it's in the Constitution or whatever, I need to look at that, that says that the church cannot take a stand or position on anything unless the congregation has a vote on it. And I understand that. As individuals, we've protested about LGBTQ plus rights, or the dividing line between us and them, or the sin of Route 630, how it divides them from us. I could go on, but you understand that picture. Several years ago, the UUs in Arkansas had a central meeting of all the congregations in Arkansas, I think twice a year. And out of one of those meetings came a resolution that the UUs in Arkansas would establish a justice ministry. It was called the Arkansas UU Justice Ministry. And it is part of a project, if you will, of the UUA nationally, where UUAs in a state would get involved in a 501c4 and lobby. I was lucky enough to be involved in that, and well, it failed. It lasted a couple of years, but there was no synergy. There just wasn't the connection among all the congregations. There just wasn't enough willpower to really make it active. Sure, I and a few other people went down to the state capitol and we spoke against certain bills. And it made us feel good, and we tried to publicize that throughout the state. But ultimately, it failed. I really think that the Senate committee that I spoke to a lot listened to the UU voice. I remember there was a bill, I forget what it was all about, but there was an amendment to the bill. I think it had to do with marriage. And there were a number of liberal groups in the room speaking for or against the bill. And I'm sitting there and I got pissed off. And I went up to speak, and there was an amendment, I forget which conservative red person put it in the bill, but it said that no court in the state of Arkansas can recognize same-sex marriage, even if the Supreme Court had ruled on it. So I got up and I said, I want to thank the committee today. I'm a former teacher, but if I were teaching today, you gave me my lesson plan for tomorrow, because I can proudly go into my classroom and tell the students that the state of Arkansas has adopted a bill that says that its judges can ignore the Supreme Court. Can you imagine that? We don't have to follow the Supreme Court. If we don't like a Supreme Court decision, we can simply say, judges, don't do anything with it. Don't follow it. Imagine what the state of Arkansas could do. We could say we're not going to follow EEO laws or labor unions. Oh, we don't care about the National Labor Relations Board. That's a federal statute. Supreme Court has ruled on that. We can ignore that. Next time I went to the committee, it was gone. That amendment was gone. Today there's a number of religious groups who speak to the legislature. And I use the word religious with caution, as so many so-called religious groups do not practice love so much as want to segregate others from their own group or their so-called majority or from their so-called God. Someone needs to speak our truth to the state legislature. Someone needs to speak our truth in front of the state legislature. And I believe it's time for us here at UUCLR to do so. If this isn't done, the only voices heard in our state capitol will be MAGA Republicans or the few liberals and progressive groups or persons holding state office or being in the state legislature. I, along with Margot Cameron and Melissa Stone, hopefully they're going to join me, will be working on getting this idea in front of UUCLR over the next several or more months. And I would like each of you to consider this also. We need to change our ways so that the UU voice can be heard where it needs to be heard. I know it's not easy. I know it may be difficult, but I think it needs to be done. So if you're interested in joining in this project, just see me after the service, let me know. Call me, email me. My information is in the church directory, and we'll get moving on it. As I said earlier, this whole service today has been a part of a sermon or discussion about social justice issues that are current or have been in the past. But we all know that the struggle for social justice never changes. It never stops. As a United States citizen, I know that few of us really look at history and try to learn from it. And I could talk about being old and looking at the teenagers who don't even know where Europe might be and feel terrible about the future, but I'm not going to do that. We need to get involved with our society. We need to do it as an organization and not just as individuals. I firmly believe that UUCLR needs to step into the halls of the state capitol and become the story in that. Thank you. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Amen. Blessed be, and namaste. Go now in peace.